And we want to close out the year super strong with like a Christmas gift to us. It felt like it was a gift to us personally. It's really a gift to the world. Let's just get into it. I'm talking, of course, about actor, musician, spiritualist, diplomat, statesman, Aikido master, Steven J. Seagal. I don't know if J is...
Scratch golfer, master chef, world peace advocate.
Law enforcement officer.
Law enforcement officer. Oh, a covert operator, tier 1. The only civilian, according to his own website, to ever defuse a nuclear bomb.
Steven Seagal, our sort of spiritual guru and mentor.
He can add another thing to his list of accomplishments, and that is now author.
You know what? Also, another thing I got to say, 2017, we've had a lot of people that we've admired. They've turned out to do, horrible sexual assaults, be sexual harassers, just brilliant people that we love, like Mark Halperin and Glenn Thrush. But the nice thing about Steven Seagal is he's never done anything like that.
No, absolutely.
He's someone that you can still endorse his work with a clear conscience. Totally.
Yeah, you don't have to separate the man and the artist. They're one. His life is his art.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's the opposite of a predator. He keeps women safe.
Yes, because he's in the order of the Shadow Wolves.
What's the opposite of a predator? A protector.
Yeah.
And Steven Seagal is a protector, and now he has written a novel called The Way of the Shadow Wolves, The Deep State and the Hijacking of America. This is by Steven Seagal and co-author Tom Morrissey, with a foreword by Sheriff Joe Arpaio.
Hell yeah.
Oh, you know what the best thing about this is? We finally learned Morrissey from the Smiths' first name.
I mean, this is how you know that this is going to be good, and this is how you know that Steven Seagal is a next-level genius. He's one of those figures who his contemporaries misunderstand because they're not on the level that they could even understand, come close to grasping what he's about. Because a book with the subtitle, The Deep State and the Hijacking of America... Yeah, a novel. You would think, no, that sounds like a nonfiction book, something in the current events section of Barnes & Noble. It's a fucking novel because it breaks through all of your bullshit self-imposed categories.
Well, it's like a Cat Person. Everyone thought Cat Person was a personal essay because they're used to reading essays about, relationships and stuff, but it was a short story. This is like Cat Person for men.
Yes. This is the book that all men need to read and need to think about.
Actually, women need to read it because they need to. Okay, with Cat Person, women were like, men need to read this to understand what it's like when they're a Reddit guy with the garbage pipe, can't lay pipe. But with this, it's like, well, women have to learn why we have to be Redditors with trash dick because the world is scary.
And there's a deep state.
There's a deep state. It's making my dick smaller. It's making me fatter. It's making me worse at sex. Read this, women, now.
Let's dive into this, guys.
Yes. Let's muff dive into Steven Seagal.
Hell yes.
I'm just going to begin now. It says here, we dedicate this book to the Native Americans who were victims of genocide by the early invaders from Europe.
Oh, that's nice.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Is this? Wait, are we reading Steven Seagal or are we reading Settlers?
This is the Howard Zinn. This is dedicated. Okay, the dedication continues. It says, to the tribal police who combine the old ways and the new to defend our border with intelligence and integrity. To the U.S. Marshals, most of whom represent the ideal of the Texas Rangers, the goodness of the nation in one man, one badge, riding alone.
Wait a minute. The Texas Rangers is still an organization. Like they're basically the Texas State Police. So why didn't he just dedicate it to the Texas Rangers?
Because they embody the goodness of the nation.
Yeah, but I mean, if they embody the spirit of the Texas Rangers are still around. He could just. Wouldn't they embody this? Wouldn't the actual Texas Rangers embody the spirit of the Texas Rangers more than a different organization?
The baseball team is still around.
Yeah.
And finally, to the average American citizen, awakened and finally, perhaps ready to confront the deep state and restore our Constitution.
This is so Decker. It's beyond.
The next page says, this is a work of fiction, and any resemblance to anyone living or dead is purely coincidental. But always remember that the truth comes in many forms.
Wow, is this Tristram Shandy? This is like a postmodern masterpiece.
I feel like I'm at a crossing and Steven Seagal is blocking my path, not because he's fat, he's just tactically wide. And he's like, this is a fictional story, but certain elements are true. They may be coincidental, but they may be there for a reason. You have to tell me what the fuck I'm talking about.
I imagine also that he pushed himself. He got into this crossway by somebody pushing him on a desk chair. Because I only imagine Seagal now in a very large office chair being pushed around on the wheels.
That's
He doesn't stand up anymore.
The highest level of Aikido is sitting down all the time.
Yes.
In Sheriff Joe Arpaio's foreword, I'm not going to read all of it, but he says,
It's mostly the sound of guns being shot into the ceiling.
it says here, I know and have worked with Steven Seagal, who is a law enforcement officer, along with being an international movie star.
Awesome dog killer.
International movie
He
star.
kills dogs with the best of them.
International movie star is a great way to put can only get his films financed in breakaway republics.
He has an unusual understanding of the world in which this story takes place. During his time with my office, he proves his skills as a fugitive hunter when he arrested one of our top fugitives within 48 hours after beginning the search for him. He brought us a new and extremely effective way of getting the job done. I first met with Tom Morrissey when he was a chief deputy U.S. Marshal for the Federal District of Arizona. We became close allies and united our agencies as we fought the good fight against the evolving threat of illegal drugs that were moving through Arizona. Both of these men bring their experiences to the life on the pages of this book. It is my hope that you have not only enjoyed the storyline of The Way of the Shadow Wolves, but you will also think about the message portrayed here. It is less than a hair's breadth from the frightening truth of what is actually happening today in America. Sheriff Joe Arpaio.
Yeah, Steven Seagal revolutionized the way we did policing. He pointed out, why are you running around shooting all these dogs? It takes forever when you could just drive a tank through a dog kennel.
Stevens, my tribal name is he who flattens dogs. They call me the Labrador flattener. That way Barack Obama can't put them on a gyro.
Now, in addition to a dedication and forward, which is telling you the truth comes in many forms. So sometimes
a sandwich, sometimes a wrap.
sometimes artists use lies to tell the truth. So there's a preface by Seagal himself that spells this out even further.
A preface to his own novel.
Yeah,
Baller.
and he says, reading from now, he says, what if the deep... I'm going to read this in Seagal.
You gotta.
Okay. What if the deep state is not, as some strive to suggest, unelected government officials, generally in the secret intelligence community and the military, who run amok outside the rule of law? What if abusive elements of the federal government are very much part of the deep state, but they also should be seen as the best of the servant class, not the masters?
What the fuck?
What-
That's the exact same thing.
What if the deep state begins with one of the world's largest churches and one of the world's most powerful families who control London and Wall Street as
This
well
is LaRouche.
as well
This
as
is fucking LaRouche.
as well as the central bank.
This is Lyndon LaRouche. If anyone is a connoisseur of American paranoia, Lyndon LaRouche's entire premise is that the Queen of England is the ruler of the world and also the chief drug trafficker on earth. And also, as I should point out from that, connecting to that, the head of the Church of England, the Anglican Communion.
Yeah, one of the
I'm
most
calling it.
powerful
He's doing
churches, the
full-
Anglican Communion.
Excuse me, billions of dollars, my friend, billions, and that's
I
also
love that.
Episcopalians. Every Episcopalian in the United States is technically part of
Being
it.
an Episcopalian or an Anglican is just the same thing as belonging to a Rotary Club. It's the exact same thing. You may as well
Or
just
it's the
not believe
world
in
hub
God.
for drug trafficking, as Lyndon LaRouche said. So this motherfucker literally picked up a LaRouche pamphlet off of a bus station, and then he turned that into his worldview. This is even better than I'd hoped.
Continuing.
I love that. I love the Queen of England paranoia that she's one of the most powerful figures.
Yeah.
This shadowy, this old senile woman with her hideous fucking family, this ceremonial ruler. I saw like flat Earth people who were like, think, do your research, think about why they don't want you to know about the flat Earth, and it's just incoherent reasons for why. But one of them is the Queen of England is the world's largest landowner. She owns $10 trillion worth of land. And they come to that.
Which would presumably
That's
be
not remotely
worthless if
true.
it were proven to be flat instead of slightly curved.
Well, they come to this figure by counting up all the dominions where she's still the figurehead. So, you know,
So like all of
some
Australia and
Northwest,
Canada?
all of Australia, some Northwest Territories, Arctic island is.
Oh wait, you mean all of Australia? If she owns all of Australia, she's got like at least $11,000.
Yeah, that's some prime
Wait.
real estate out there in the outback.
This gets better, though. He's about to get even more woke in this preface. Continuing. What if governments failed to nationalize the central banks, leaving the deep state to be controlled by one of the world's largest churches and one of its most powerful families, with their personally appointed agents throughout the world of finance?
What if instead of the House of Windsor, he meant the Gallagher brothers?
You mean Gallagher and Gallagher 2?
Yes.
The prop comics?
No, Nolan Liam.
No, I meant Gallagher and Gallagher too.
What if they failed to nationalize the central bank?
Yes.
What does that mean?
It means
he's
the
saying that
conspiracy
the
theory-
Queen of England controls our central banks. They are not controlled by national bourgeois. They are controlled by the Queen of England.
What if the greatest crimes against humanity occur at the banking level, where bankers are able to manipulate interest rates and foreign exchange rates?
That's true.
Create billions in digital cash
That's
without
true.
backing.
Not wrong.
Manufacture, quote, derivatives
Yes.
that they sell to
Accurate.
unwitting investors.
Yep.
And start wars
Correct.
to impact the price of oil and other
It's not
commodities.
wrong.
This is-
Bernie
is-
Sanders?
That's all correct.
This
I mean,
is-
LIBOR, we know all this shit.
Yeah, this is the big.
Forex
This is the sequel to The Big Short, The Fat Short.
It continues. This is crazy. How woke he is. How like it's like we're writing this preface here.
We have to rewrite the book now.
What if beneath the bankers and the political parties, generally two parties per country, that conspire to exclude all other political parties and
True.
independents from power?
That's true.
What if in the United States one party controls 17% of the eligible voters and the other major party controls 13% of the eligible voters? What if another 20% belong to small parties while fully 50% are independent,
Oh, boy.
no party preference,
Oh, boy.
or not interested?
Oh, boy.
What if many active politicians could be assumed to be compromised? What if they are being bribed or blackmailed by multiple motherfucking parties, including the secret intelligence services of their own countries? What if co-equal to the political parties are the secret intelligence services? What if in addition to the spying on and blackmailing of politicians and judges, the secret intelligence services engage in drug running,
That's accurate.
illicit arms trading,
Yes.
money laundering,
Yes.
and child exploitation (in parentheses pedophilia)
Probably.
as a
Oh yeah, I mean, like the British are any indication.
as a
yeah.
means of manipulating specific individuals. What if the quote mainstream media is a complicit partner with the banking, political, and intelligence communities? What if communicates to the public a broad range of false information and mixes a broad range of mindless entertainment with outright fake news,
Ah, there it is.
while failing to do serious investigative reporting or provide any foundation for citizens desiring to be informed about current events?
That's all
lying
true.
about international movie stars in their basements.
What if the universities are also complicit in the deep state narrative? What if most history taught is a lie? What if few realize that the Pulitzer Prize was created to honor the man who invented yellow journalism, the original fake news?
Good stuff.
I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit. He goes, he says, what if religions are also complicit in
Whoa.
the deep state? What if he goes on, what if, put most simply, the deep state is the totality of the institutions of governance that are used to concentrate wealth and power among the 1% while excluding the 99% from having an effective voice and vote?
He literally is just describing the architecture of a capitalist economy.
Matt.
Like he just described base and superstructure, essentially.
What if the deep state is our common enemy? What if we, the people, have the power to say no to the deep state? What if this book is dedicated to the Constitution and to the Republic? Would the answers to the preceding be in some ways answered? Chapter 1. Chapter 1. Tribal Police, America's Front Line in the Desert. Now, this first chapter is weird. I'm not going to read all of it. It's only noticeable because it includes stage directions, like it was written as a screenplay.
Shit! So this means this is a movie that he could not get some Bulgarian drug dealer
and he
to
decided
make.
just make it into a novel.
Considering what he has gotten produced in the last 5 years, holy shit, this must be bad.
So the book begins with actual italicized directions. It says, in a darkened Arizona movie theater, a somber male voice provides commentary over the Native American chanting and drumming that plays in the background of a documentary film. And now this is like the documentary. Perhaps the greatest morality play in American history is what occurred in the struggle between the Indian tribes and those in the U.S. government who were hell-bent on civilizing them. And he talks about history, and then it just says another italicized thing. The closing moments of the film arrive, and the credits start to roll as the narrator continues. Native Americans have an innate and powerful spiritual connection with the earth and its creatures. An understanding of the true nature of all that is on this planet and how it works in the perfect balance of cause and effect. An elite group within the Native American communities, known as shadow wolves, are part of this perfect balance and are the, quote, best of the best, with the ability to see what can't be seen with the eyes. They know without having to be taught. They blend easily with the night. True right from wrong is ingrained in their souls, which makes them able to stand against evil no matter the cost, to see footprints on rocks. A man sits alone, quietly watching the film in the back of the darkened theater. He stirs to his seat and comments to himself, "It's about time." John Goad rises from his seat and continues viewing as he backs up slowly, making his way out of the theater into the lobby. Matt, the last name is spelled G-O-D-E. Would you pronounce that Goad?
That's Goad, yeah.
Goad?
I thought it was G-O-A-D, and this was a Jim Goad
yeah.
reference.
John God.
All right, this is
John God.
Chapter 2 is where it really starts, and this is an actual book chapter. That was sort of introduction. The first chapter It was very weird. So, Chapter 2, Deep State Sign in the Desert. The Arizona desert sky was full of color as the sun set, and the spirit of the night began to stir. The clouds, a brilliant orange, were hanging on the horizon, with sun rays lighting them from the bottom up.
Love those orange
As
stars.
the daylight crept beyond the mountains, off in the distance, but not too far from where a man named John Goad was standing. This tall, lean man, who in the
Bear of a
approaching
man?
darkness could have been easily confused with a saguaro cactus, was breathing in the beautiful scene before him.
I'm sorry, he's a wolf of a man. I
Yes.
just remembered.
The Native American, John Nan-Tan Goad, had classic chiseled features and was born and raised on the reservation, leaving it at the age of 18 after graduating high school to join the United States Marines. It was clear even in boot camp that he had something unique going that had its genesis in the words of his grandfather, who taught him the old ways, starting when he was 13 years old.
Fucking fish.
His spirit was totally connected to this land. He knew that when he walked in the desert, he was stepping where the many brave, bold, and sometimes naive men who preceded him once walked. He could feel their energy and sense their spirit with the way things were playing out in their culture.
I feel that way when I go to buy cigarettes.
How they had been led down a path of total dependence by an elite group of politicians who were concerned only with absolute power. Nothing more, nothing left.
This is my favorite trope in bad writing or like bad filmmaking is when someone like goes anywhere, they're like, you know who else walked these steps? My ancestors, or like, you know, someone I respect. You know, whenever I jack off, I'm like, my grandfather did this. He never thought that I would be able to afford a 1-bedroom in New York. Well, I hate it here. I bust on my stomach. It coagulates in my belly button. I think the rotten politicians would never do this. The clowns in Congress don't know anything about our ancient ways.
About 20 feet from where John was standing was a rise in the land. He proceeded with what he was doing despite the action behind him. I'm skipping around a little bit.
That's literally a stage direction.
Moving slowly toward it while shaking his fist in the air. This was his grandfather's old ways method of bidding the sun a good night and asking it to return in the morning.
This is classic. This is taking something that someone with dementia did and being like, yeah, that's indigenous. Yeah, my grandfather would shake his fist at the sun and say, don't come back here, like the Shelbyville guy with the lemon tree. And yeah, that's ancient wisdom, according to Steven Seagal.
Going to the zoo and then having your grandfather yell at a duck is an ancient tradition.
Well, the ancient tradition of my people walking around Walmart in a bathrobe and thinking that everyone's my wife.
My ancestors posted in this local news comment section. They too were upset about the saggy pants.
Yeah, my great grandfather wrote many letters to the newspaper saying that they should stop hiding the fact that Doonesbury is a Jew. It's ancient wisdom.
As he was ceremonially dancing and chanting towards the rise, he suddenly dropped to his knees. There he began his shaman-natured ritual, celebrating the spirit of the wolf, the dominant creature of the night. As he chanted, a shadowy wolf slowly approached him out of the encroaching darkness, kissed his forehead, and stood there for a moment watching him. This is magical realism now, Matt.
The future song IBU came on. Wolf shoved his tongue down his throat.
After a moment, the animal turned and looked at the men who had stopped dead in their tracks as they approached from behind. The mysterious wolf's fierce eyes glared at them as they froze in place. He then slowly turned his glance back to the kneeling Native American, kissing his forehead again before disappearing back into the shadows. At that point, John heard movement coming from what sounded like 3 men. He got to his feet and continued dancing his way into the darkness. He went behind the rise where he was able to observe them, but they could not see him.
John dabbed into the moonlight.
He was a ghost warrior, known as a shadow wolf, one who could easily blend with the night, disappear into the darkness at will. They spread out, moving swiftly without making a sound, closing in from different directions on the place where they last saw him. All 3 had been startled by the appearance of the wolf and prepared themselves should it attack them. John's first thoughts that they were sent by one of the drug cartels to take him out because of his successes with intercepting their supply lines into Arizona.
Hey, SA, we're from the Democratic Party.
He remained part of the darkness, blended with the desert landscape, observing them, totally hidden from their eyes, his Sig Sauer in the hand, poised and at the ready. As suddenly as they appeared, they were gone, motionless. John held his position for another 10 minutes to make certain they weren't doing the same and waiting for him to move. After a short time, the night sounds of the desert and the spirit of the wolf helped him to know that they were gone.
Hang on. So he waited for 10 minutes to make sure they weren't also waiting for 10 minutes.
Yeah. That's the 10-minute rule.
That's
All Tier 1 operators know that.
That's true. That's basic desert tactics.
That's a combination of Tier 1 and indigenous traditions, waiting for 10 minutes.
And then they were gone. I thought that we had gotten them all, but maybe I was wrong. Never underestimate the deep state, was John's lingering thought.
What? I thought he thought it was drug cartels.
Not mutually exclusive, buddy. Someone wasn't paying attention.
Okay, here he goes.
It was cartel leader Tom Perez.
Yeah. Hey, we have some wonderful opportunities for G-Packs.
So that's setting the scene. He's in the desert, a ghost warrior at night. 3 men are tracking him. Now the narrative jumps a few days earlier. Things had started to get strange when he began hearing from a confidential informant that there were black SUVs doing a lot of driving in the night out where nobody was. He mentioned a young tribal member.
Nobody was, except for the one person who was there.
Yeah, he meets this like sort of reservation kid, and he goes. So he says, "How come you were out there?" John asked the young man, whose nickname was Sweet Tooth. "I was camping out there." "Why?" John asked. "Wanted to be alone, trying to find myself." "I'd call that being as alone as you can get without being on the moon," John said sarcastically.
What a great turn of phrase.
Amazing.
He really just has an amazing ear for language.
This guy is a wit.
Yeah.
"I like being alone, that's all." Oh, wait, no, sorry, that was the kid. "How many nights did you see the SUVs, Tooth?" So he goes on like this. He's talking to this young kid who's out in the desert in the middle of the night. He saw some SUVs doing shady things. He says the rangy young Indian was ganglion of average height, dark complexioned with long black hair, and a constant, slightly hopeful smile. He wore a black Billy Jack-styled flat-top cowboy hat. In his early 20s, he didn't light up the sky with his brilliance. John didn't have to think much before taking him up on his offer. So he's going to take him to The part of the desert where he saw the black SUVs.
When Seagal described his smile, he was just describing the Cleveland Indians logo. He just spent this, like, his research for this book was looking at racist sports logos.
I did enjoy also the super current and relatable Billy Jack reference.
Yep.
Yes, he was wearing a Billy Jack hat, and he had the smile of a young Al Jolson.
So going on, it says, he studied the tracks in the direction. Well, okay, this was a common occurrence in the Arizona desert between the Mexican border and Phoenix. Something he thought extremely dangerous, and if left unchecked, could cause the eventual destruction of the United States.
Whoa.
The deep state within the mainstream media kept the eyes of the country on the flood of illegals that were coming across the border. They painted them as simple people in need of a better life. It was a cunning distraction to take the eyes off the drugs that billionaire drug lords were pumping into the U.S. John knew why it was working, and he saw it as collusion between the paid-off media and the drug lords. His sense was that the then presidential administration in Washington was using the media as their potent tool for forwarding their open borders agenda. He felt like they were poisoning the minds of the many who drank up what they were spewing like thirsty nomads in a desert oasis.
Oh, I'm so thirsty. Give me that water. I need to spew it all over the place. That's how I drink. I don't know how I keep dying.
It's weird.
I have no idea.
Every
how
time
to
I go
drink.
to an oasis, I get a bunch of water and spew it everywhere, and then I fucking die. What the fuck?
Oh, I'm fucking starving, dude. Give me that jerky. I want to chew it for about 20 seconds and just spit it in your face. That's how I eat. I'm chronically malnourished for some reason.
So the illegals are a distraction from the drug trafficking, but what's supposed to destroy America?
The drugs.
Drugs.
The drugs?
Funny, no. Funny you asked that, Virgil. What troubled John even more was that the country was asleep when it came to the OTMs, or other than Mexicans, coming across a virtually open southern border into the country and possibly assembling for what America had never known before, a jihadi caliphate.
I'm guessing that Steven saw that Breitbart article where somebody found a T-shirt
Yeah, they were
next
like,
to the Rio
prayer
Grande
rug.
and said, prayer rug.
I love the idea. I love the idea of just like a DIY caliphate,
Now,
just springing up slowly. They're like, they start out with neighborhood watches. They're like, no, it's nothing weird, nothing out of the ordinary. We're just making sure you're not doing anything haram. Illegal.
If I wanted to create a global caliphate, or a caliphate in America, rather, I'm not going to try to get a bunch of guys in the arduous overland journey from Mexico to I don't even know what. Like established neighborhood watches, or like what the fuck is even the plan? All you need to do, kidnap Jake Paul and get him to convert to Islam, and you're done, because he will then start a bunch of videos to his Jake Paul fans going, "Hey kids, you know what's fucking fleek? It's the fucking Prophet Muhammad. He's on point. He's swag, epic fucking swag." And then in 2 weeks, they would be beheading their parents for blasphemy and raising the black flag over every fucking American small town city hall.
No, that's what I don't get. That's my favorite thing about like the right wing caliphate conspiracy theory is that like people can't even get their neighbors to like join the Kiwanis Club. How are they going to get them
Kiwanis
to
Club?
Well, who gives a shit? I'm only pronounced legitimate things like the Islamic State. How would you get people to join your like junior caliphate? You can't even get people in a beer league. Yeah. Americans have no sense of community.
And it's like it's a beer league, also no beer.
Yeah.
So there's going to be no beer.
The deep state is using the illegals to distract from the drug trafficking, which provides a porous border
Yes.
for the
real threat, the caliphate
to
to
come
come
through
through.
to create a new caliphate.
Which
Yeah,
is
okay,
what the deep state wants. The deep
They
state
want
wants
to be replaced.
just
by a caliphate?
to round out this thought, he says his fear was that they were already spread throughout the country without anyone understanding how big a threat it was, especially in the American cities they could be targeting. So they're already here.
I mean, just to be clear, I know I'm like trying to figure this out and take this seriously and understand, like try to discern any kind of internal coherence here, but this is actual mainstream conservative thought right
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
no,
no,
that's
yeah,
what
This
they
is
think.
the center of gravity in the Republican
mainstream
Party.
conservative thought is that the media is like doing daily reports about Mexicans and being like, let's just open our borders. And then meanwhile, like they send the women and children first, but behind them are drug traffickers who are also Muslim, and they're selling people lounge, so they're too high to resist the caliphate.
Although, Matt, you pointed out this is LaRouche shit, but LaRouche was a Marxist, right? That's how he started.
He was
invented
very
Marxism.
eclectic. He was a left winger. He was a right winger. He was basically everything at once. He was amazing.
It's
The
like
guy-
Marxism and Bircherism kind of melded together.
Kind of, yeah.
The two smartest
Amalgam.
things you can believe, yeah.
Well, the thing is that what's so frustrating about this, and that this is really interesting because in addition to being an absurd document written by a sex pervert and moron, it's also
Hey, don't insult Tom Morrissey like that. Matt.
and a cool genius and martial arts god.
He wrote Shakespeare's sister.
But is that it identifies? This is absolutely tracking with every folk belief of like
Yeah.
the populist right. Like the people banning things can make him president, apparently. But the thing about it is you have a basic alienation from capitalism because these are normal people. They don't have a lot. They're not the ones benefiting from the current neoliberal order. And then instead of like following that alienation to its roots in capital, they lose themselves in these conspiracy theories that are more attractive because they are more coherent and make more sense because they are a narrative that tracks with the narratives that they see in entertainment,
yes,
like fucking
yeah.
Steven Seagal films.
Exactly.
I'm gonna paraphrase a little bit. So he's Agent John Goad is sort of talking to this kid Sweet Tooth, who's kind of a skell, kind of a shitheel, but he sees something in the kid despite him being scrawny and weak. So he says,
Hey, kid, you could do all my actions for me while I sit down for 3 hours.
He says he felt a sudden surge of sadness fill his heart as he recalled his own upbringing by a mother who struggled to make his life good and a paternal grandfather who taught him the ancient ways. From time to time, he could understand until he went off to the Marines. He thought about the way he was guided and kept on the path by two people who cared about him and the way his life should be. Did Sweet Tooth have anything like that in his life? My name is John Goad. John Nantan Goad, he answered with a trace of sensitivity. Cool, I like that. You are this quiet guy who moves around like no one I have ever seen. You are a res man, and yet you ain't. He had a curious expression on his face, but he seemed sincere in a crude way. How does a dude get himself a job like yours? A dude gets himself a high school diploma for starters. You got one of those? So then Sweet Tooth goes on and like tries to tell him that like he wants to become a cop, and you know he's been in some trouble before, blah blah blah. And the whole time he's John Nantan Goad is sort of coaxing out of him the story of what he saw in the desert the other night with dark SUVs moving small boxes from truck beds into SUVs and strange men in the desert while he was, quote, camping out. So continuing, it says, John didn't buy all of his story, but the part that he did caused him to fully understand that what was taking place out there under the cover of darkness was not something to be celebrated by good people. There was a feeling about this place that disturbed John, but he couldn't put his finger on what that feeling was. It stirred something in his memory that made him feel uneasy, though he couldn't quite get where it all came together. It seemed to take him back to the things his grandfather had warned him about when he was spending time learning from the old man. He remembered being told that he had the spirit of the snake in his bloodline, and that, quote, gave him power over some people and many snakes.
That's the funniest thing I've ever heard.
It wasn't until he became a full-grown man that he was totally understood what that meant. But what had been going on in that place at that time was unsettling at best. So then he goes, as they began the
For every one person that I can control between 80 and 96 snakes.
I just love like how he's not greedy. He's not like, no, it'd be ridiculous if I could control all the snakes. It's just like, it's like people. Some of them like you, some of them don't. Just some of the snakes will do my bidding. I know as much as you about it.
And then he grills Sweet Tooth for what his real name is, and he gets it out of him. And I'd just like to make note of the fact that Sweet Tooth's real name is a character that's named Henry Begay. So it's John Nantan Goad and Henry Begay are the main
Two
characters
normal
so far.
guys having a normal adventure.
So
Just regular names people have.
he says he stopped dead in the middle of the small dirt road, and in the middle of his sentence when he noticed several coyotes pawing the ground just off to the side of where they were driving. John got out quickly. He then paused for a few seconds before beginning to walk cautiously towards the animal. The younger man stayed in his seat, not wanting to move until he knew what was going on. He froze when he saw John draw his weapon slowly. The big man was hoping he wouldn't have to use it on the dogs as he moved to within 15 feet of the small pack. They took off when he made some strange sounds and spoke words in a language the young Native American had never heard before. He shook his head, saying to himself, I believe those animals understood every word this guy said. This is some crazy shit, man. He said that to himself. He said, I believe that this tall man is speaking to those coyotes. This is crazy.
How is this a Steven Seagal character where when encountering a group of canines, he doesn't just shoot them with a rocket launcher?
Well, no, this gives some insight to that interaction. Like, maybe they said something. You know? Maybe they were begging for suicide by cop. Most dogs that cops kill are looking for a way out.
So
I'm a doggo whom feel like him on fire in him soul. 14 out of 10. Please kill me, fat sexual predator.
Basically, Agent John Nantan Goad finds a woman's body in the desert in a shallow grave. Her hands and feet are missing. She's a Caucasian woman, though. They made sure to
So that the audience will actually care.
and Henry Begay is worried that it was his brother who's, in his words, been running with some bad people, really bad people, man. And then so he keeps trying to get the whole story out of Henry Begay, aka Sweet Tooth, and then he says, I don't know why. He says, I don't know why. I just can't talk about it with anyone. You wouldn't understand any of this shit, man. It's like family stuff. What kind of family stuff?
Is it family of snakes? Because I would extremely understand that.
John watched his reaction to the question closely. Stuff like, I thought he may have gotten himself into some bad karma and it caught up with him. You want to tell me the story? The whole story? Then maybe I can help you. Sweet Tooth looked down as he spoke. He shook his head, expressing self-pity. Not too many people into helping me these days. Well, maybe you just met one. John was stoic, but his sincerity came through when he wanted it to. My feeling is that you got something on your shoulders that maybe needs to be lifted off. Talk to me. The younger Native American wanted to trust John, and he actually had to fight back the tendency to do so. He had been burned by a lot of people he had trusted before and had adjusted his thought process to stay away from anyone but family when it came to an issue like this. I got a question for you, Goad. What? Do you know anything about the Mexican military running practice shit on this side of the border? Practice shit? What kind of practice shit are you talking about? Maneuvers?
Just that line is so funny to me.
So he's just the Mexican military or somebody is doing something in the Arizona desert with SUVs and trucks and boxes and business, and it has something to do with Henry Begay's brother, who's got in with the cartels. And he goes, "There's more to this than you're telling me, Henry." John's eyes were like molten steel when he didn't hear what he wanted or if he felt he was being played. And at that moment, he felt like he was being played.
But John's body was like a molten lava cake.
He bent towards Sweet Tooth's face, since he was a good 6 inches taller, and said, "Stop bullshitting me with half stories, man. You're not telling me anywhere near what you know, and it's making me not want to help you, Henry." So then, goes on for a little bit. He tells him more about, his brother is working with, John pushed him, trying to get a fix on whether or not they might be deep state operatives, that Henry Begay's brother. No, they weren't American, but he said that there were these heavy-breathing Arab guys coming out with them. Heavy breathing? What was making them breathe heavy? Felix was with them, basically. Felix was doing Hezbollah desert maneuvers in his new training.
I want to know. Well, first, I want to point out that the maneuvers line is hilarious because it's classic Seagal dialogue where someone describes like an event or something going on to him, and they're like, "Yeah, they were doing, they were shipping drugs out," and Seagal will say something like, "You mean exporting?" Like he does what I call thesaurus dialogue, which is like whenever you're talking to someone you don't quite know what they're talking about, but you want to make sure that they know that you're on their level and you can associate words with them that don't quite move the dialogue forward. But because every dialogue, every bit of dialogue in every Seagal thing is just like from two different movies smashed together, it doesn't matter.
So there's heavy breathing Arab guys.
But why did he
doing maneuvers with the Mexican army in the Arizona desert?
Does he say
So
why
he goes-
they were heavy breathing?
Well, he goes, heavy breathing? What was making them breathe heavy? No, it doesn't have nothing to do with breathing. It's like the way they talk, man. He said they sound like they're gargling when they speak. They got some bad accents. Tooth tried to explain it as best he could. Did he tell you anything else about these guys? Yeah, he said that when they had him get some women and hashish for when they were done with whatever they were doing out there in the dark.
yeah, they came in on flying carpets.
That was his job.
Their leader, Aladdin.
They said something about making America a whole new world.
They got this weapon of mass destruction. It's a lamp.
Yeah. The strange thing was when they were done, they just hugged my brother and said, "Genie, you're free."
So that was his job? You're telling me your brother's a pimp and a drug dealer? Yeah, and that's what worries me.
He hasn't been promoted in 3 years.
He said he was going back down to Mexico with the rich guys, and they were going to stay there for a while because they were hiring him to help them with some projects. Projects?
Bear Stearns Bravo.
Did they projects? Did he say what kind of projects? No, that's all. That's all he said, and he took off. He's got him a nice ride now. It's an Audi with Sonoran license plates. He's been strutting around all proud like he finally made something of himself. John ran Tooth's story through his head, thinking that this was shaping up to be something that couldn't be classified as a happy ending for the young Henry Begay. The way people go missing in Mexico is becoming more and more expected in some circles of society these days, and Jimmy Begay seemed to be traveling in those circles. Jimmy Begay is the brother.
I have a theory. I haven't read the book, obviously, but I have a theory about the plot. Jimmy Begay is doing crime, like doing federal crimes, so he can turn state's evidence and go into witness protection, and they can finally give him a new last name. The most convoluted plot.
So they find the body in the desert. CSI Crime Scene Investigations Unit shows up, and then Sweet Tooth says, "Well, like, I'm going to be your assistant on this, right?" "My assistant?" John looked at him with a slight smile. There was something going on with this kid that John found worthy. "Now let me think this through. You're going to be my assistant? My assistant what?" "Your assistant, cop, I guess." "You guess?" John was beginning to enjoy his newfound friend's naivete, but that coupled with his sense that somehow, some way, Jimmy Begay might be messing with some danger people.
He literally is saying like he fell in with a bad deep state crowd.
He just told them that his brother is like doing shit for Mexican drug cartels, heavy breathing Arabs who want women in hashish in the desert, and the Mexican military operating on the U.S. side of the border.
They were there because they found a woman with her feet cut off. And he's like, "Oh yeah, my brother probably did that."
And he's like,
"Oh, your brother."
I can't help but have some feeling that maybe Jimmy Begay is involved in some bad shit, man.
The thing I really like about this is they're like, he fell in with a bad crowd, the deep state. Like, like Evan McMullen is just hanging around the res being like, "Hey kid, you want to make some money?"
Yeah, there's a guy in a spy versus spy trench coat on every corner being like, "Psst, psst, put this microfilm up your ass."
So Jimmy Begay might be messing with some danger people. He couldn't shake the notion that this could have something to do with the international deep state. the hidden actors who played hard with the truth and understood the real game and its dark rules. End of chapter 2.
That's so good.
The opening of Steven
understood.
Seagal's Shadow Wolves.
Oh my God, we're reading every fucking
Yeah.
chapter of this.
Amazing work by Steven
Oh,
Tentacion.
that is so. Yeah, you know, I thought that this car accident, I suspect it might have something to do with the deep state and
wish-
its dark ways.
I wish Steven Seagal could go back in time to investigate Jack the Ripper and be like, I think this guy might be up to no good.
I think this guy might be one of those motherfucking Jews. You see that writing on the wall? It says so. So I deduce that he's one of the Hebraic peoples.
This motherfucker Carl Panzeram seems to have maybe fallen in with a bad crowd.
It's the motherfucking protocols of the fucking elders of Zion. Which is basically what this international deep state is.
That's kind of the preface to this book.
there's some type of motherfuckers who are A to B motherfuckers. They go from their house to the store to the dojo to even the nightclub. But there are other motherfuckers who be wandering forever.
So that was basically the opening chapter.
Cannot
and
wait for
preface
more.
to
Very excited.
Steven
Really
Seagal's
good.
This is gonna rip
story
and
of the
slap.
Shadow
Good.
Wolves and the secret untold history of the bad danger people who make up the motherfucking deep state.
Yeah.
Who are like it sounds like the foot soldiers of the caliphate are like Instagram high sweetie guys
Yeah.
from the Gulf.
Yeah, watch out, Ben Shapiro. I think you've been owned. This
is
blows-
better than True
This is
Allegiance.
seriously, honestly, like no joke. Like this is. It has the same weird repetition. Like I didn't quite get it. Like, I didn't read the whole thing, but Sweet Tooth is referred to as a young Native American probably 6 times in the narration. So it has that weird like repetitive tick. But seriously, Tom Morrissey and Steven Seagal are actually better prose stylists than Ben
Oh,
Shapiro.
way better.
This
Well,
is
this is
way
actually
more
better.
interesting. This
Like,
is
this-
more.
like the
Yeah, this is
dialogue
actually-
is more.
the
This is
character-
actually exciting.
Yeah,
Ben
yeah,
Shapiro's
you
book is
wanna-
boring pedantry.
You want to know what happens next. Like there's always suspense. It's interesting. You don't know the whole thing yet. Whereas in this, it'll be like, yes, it's this like fat dumbass and his child sidekick bumbling around the desert. But it's like, whoa, I want to find out the whole plot. But with Ben Shapiro, it's just like every scene is just a setup for Ben Shapiro to like reword one of his arguments from his little Breitbart column.
Like, oh, look at the poverty pimp, Al Shapiro. Al Sharpton.
nice ad hominem right
Yeah. Like in Ben Shapiro's book, like the scenes like a guy is captured by Al Qaeda, but like the Al Qaeda guys are like, oh, and by the way, Republicans are more racist than Democrats.
Ben Shapiro's book is just racist West Wing.
Yeah. This is like the real shit. I feel like Seagal, because he spent so much time being a warrior, he didn't develop
A ghost
as
warrior.
a ghost warrior, not a ghost writer. He didn't develop his prose as he should. But if he had trained that way, I think he could have been like a military epic storyteller on par with Hideo Kojima.
That is, yeah. That's we'll be returning. We'll be returning.
Oh, yes.
for
We're
sure.
going back to the Valley,
Yeah.
boys.
We might actually finish this one.
However, to round
First
things
book
out,
I'll have read in 7 years.